This is the Paracave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Leagues Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, Bo Cook from Loan Market, BTZD, the official apparel partner of the Paracave Podcast, and the Parramatta Times, the official media partner of the Paracave Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. It is another game day preview podcast, and it is round 26 in the NRL, and this will more than likely be the last Eels game day preview, as it doesn't look like Parramatta will be making the semi-finals, which is a massive disappointment as a fan of the Eels, along with thousands of other Eels fans. So this will be the last game day preview featuring the Parramatta Eels, and it is the Parramatta Eels versus the Penrith Panthers, who are flying high on the top of the ladder at the moment, looking for their third minor premiership in 4 years, and the game is on Thursday night at Bluebet Stadium in Penrith. So these are usually my favourite games of the year. Living in Penrith and being a Parramatta supporter, I love it. And it's a local derby, so it's always a great game. But this one is going to be a little bit different, as the two teams Penrith are going as well as what they were in the last couple of years, but Parramatta are certainly not going as good as what they were going last year. But who better to get on for a game day preview between the Eels and the Panthers than Mr. Penrith himself, Big MG, Mark Geyer. So he joins me for a chat. He gives me some thoughts about the game, obviously from a Penrith point of view and also a Parramatta point of view. So it's a very interesting chat. So I hope you enjoy this one. I'll now hand over to myself and Big MG, Mark Geyer. And welcome back to the Paracave Podcast, and it is another game day preview, and it is round 26. It is the Eels versus the Panthers at Bluebet Stadium on Thursday night, and who better to get on the podcast for a game day preview than a Penrith legend himself, one half of Mick and MG in the morning on Triple M breakfast, Mr. Mark Geyer. How are you, MG?
Hello, Troy boy. How are you, my friend?
I'm going fantastic. Yourself?
Yeah, good, buddy. Mate, I must confess, I thought this game on Thursday might have a little bit more relevance, halfway through the year, but unfortunately for you and your Para army, it's not looking real good, is it?
No, that's what we all thought at the start of the year. Definitely, it would have been a great game leading into the semi-finals, with Para having the bye next week and a good warm-up game for the finals, but it doesn't look like it is to be. Penrith are flying. They're on top of the comp and looking to get their third minor premiership in 4 years. Parramatta, as I said, unlucky against the Roosters. They struggled and they lost that game and now find themselves in 11th position and probably out of the finals race. Is this game a foregone conclusion, considering the way that the seasons have gone for both sides?
Look, on face value, you'd say that. The way Penrith are playing, what they've won, I'm not sure, maybe 8 in a row. We keep thinking about how many games Newcastle and the Warriors have won, but Penrith are just, doing the do. They're clinical in everything they do, and if Mitchell Moses was playing, I suppose there'd be another factor as well. He's a big loss for the Eels, but look, yeah, the Paris season kind of never really started after the Ryan Madison suspension. I think that was kind of, you kind of pinpoint things in seasons where, and I'm not blaming him solely for what's going on, but you need to start your season off on a really good note, and try and get away from those other clubs that are hunting for you. And after making the grand final last year, Parramatta won to the hunted, and you want to start the season with all your arsenal of players, ready to roll. And unfortunately, excuse me, the decision that Ryan made was probably the one that kind of. Then you have Sean Lane breaking his jaw in the trials, and you haven't had real good luck with injuries, and that happens to rugby league clubs. But yeah, as far as a foregone conclusion, a local derby never is, Troy. Parramatta always seem to bring out the best in Penrith, and Penrith seem always to bring out the best in Parramatta. So I wouldn't say that Penrith are going to be. They'll be favourites, but I wouldn't bet my house on them, put it that way, or your house.
Yeah, well, I mean, season regular last season, we got you guys there last year. You got us obviously in the big one and in the semi-final at Bluebet.
Yep.
We got you 17-16 this year. It was our first win of the season. Mitchell Moses' field goal got us over the line there after a great field goal, a 2-point field goal from Nathan Cleary.
What a game.
Yeah, that evened up the scores. And so we've actually had a pretty good rivalry since 1998. I think we've played 50 times. The Panthers have got 26, we've got 24. So both teams are very close. So obviously this season it's not too close. But as you said, local derbies can bring out anything.
Especially when we're so close to each other, there was. I know that a lot of people ask me about my playing career, about the rivalry with Parramatta. Well, there was none because we're going through different transitions. I mean, the 80s were all Parramatta. We played our first semi-final in 85. Parramatta had already won 3 comps by then, 81, 82, 83. And so we're the little brother to Parramatta back in the 80s. And then the 90s, it all changed. The Panthers took, the big brother label, but they're good stats. 50 games, 26, 24. That's pretty close for a two-team, rivalry like we have. I've been impressed with a lot of things this year with Para. I think Jermaine Hopgood's been a fantastic signing.
Yep.
It's always good to look in retrospect, and a lot of people have done that with Parramatta about who they've lost. But Nirakora was a big loss, and Papali'i a big loss. But when you're winning and making grand finals, then players want more money. So you've got the salary cap, which wasn't around when Parramatta won 81, 82, 83. It's got to be, adhered to. And unfortunately, you're going to lose a couple of players. And the money that the Warriors paid for Nirakora, Parramatta, or I don't think any other club would have paid that for him. So you're going to have ups and downs along the way. But the young Brendan Hands, I think, has been a find for you guys as well. Gutho keeps doing his thing. He tries his guts out every week, and a couple of suspensions to RCG and Mega Sivo and Dylan Brown hasn't helped your campaign. These things. You look at the clubs who are up the top of the ladder, i.e. Penrith and the Broncos, and they've had a pretty uninterrupted season as far as suspensions and injuries go, and you need a bit of luck. You really do. And Parramatta haven't had that this year. But you know what? Thursday night's another night, brother. And I know you'll be thinking the Parramatta are going to kick our butts and kick our asses. I might have a little side bet on you for maybe I saw you promoting some beer online the last couple of days. Maybe a 6-pack of that up against a 6-pack of Lily Pilly wines or something.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we could do something like that. That'll certainly be. I know
we can.
I know most people will think that you'll win the bet, but you never know. You never know.
Nah.
But we're recording this before Team List Tuesday. Do you think? Obviously, Parramatta will probably run with the same side as they did last week. There's maybe Sean Lane might play the last game of the year. Do you think Penrith will rest any players this week, or do you think they'll save that for next week?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'd say probably next. If they were going to rest anyone, it'd probably be the last game before semis. They did that last year against the Cowboys up there. They gave a few boys their debuts, and now them boys, Jack Cole and Liam Henry, and these boys have been going really well in Cup as well. So I'm not sure, mate. I don't know what the rationale is. I don't know I don't know what goes through clubs' minds. I've been so far removed from playing, 20 odd years without being in the system. And I've got a boy who is playing in the system, and he doesn't talk shop with me.
Okay, yeah.
The last thing he wants to do when he comes home for 7 hours of being at training is to talk about rugby league. So I've learned to zip my lip and just not even just talk about playing cards or playing darts with him. So, but yeah, I suppose that if you can afford to rest players, Troy, that's a really good place to be in. Coming into they say that the competition is divided into two competitions, and I believe that the competition proper is a definite competition where you're trying to aspire to be as high as you can. But then the finals come around, and it's another competition unto itself. It's arduous. It's for four teams. It's a knockout. It's a knockout scenario. And if you finish in the top four, you get a second bite of the cherry. So all these things are going to come to the calculations about why clubs will rest someone or whether. But to answer your question, I don't think it'd be this week. If they did, I think they'll probably play their strongest team against Para. And if they were going to arrest anyone to be the last game of the season at home against the Cowboys, I would imagine. That's me hypothesising.
And then if they do that next week, like just quickly jump into next week, do you think Mav will get a start next week if they do rest players?
Oh, you know what? I don't know. He's played 26 games of Cup this year. He's had a fantastic season for the standard of footy that you got to be at if you want to be at Penrith. He just recently re-signed for a couple of years. He'll go into the top 30 next year. So I don't know if he does. It'd be one of them moments. I suppose that'll be pretty surreal. But if he doesn't, well, he's happy.
Yeah,
he's in a real good space at the moment. He knows that he keeps knocking on the door, and as I said, you're playing at a club where they've won 2 comps in a row. They've been in 3 grand finals in the last 4 years. They're a juggernaut at the moment. I think they're the best club. If they go on to win the minor premiership, and I think that's probably in the back of their mind as well. The minor premiership. I think the minor premiership should have a bigger carrot dangled in front of it instead of $100,000. I think we got $100,000 back in 1991.
Yeah.
So with inflation, it's got to be at least $1 million to win the Melbourne Cup, to win the minor premiership. Then you mightn't see clubs resting players. I don't know. It's one of them things, but it's a good position to be in.
Yeah, no, definitely. With it being a Thursday night, you expect it to be a sold out crowd on Thursday night.
Well, the Penrith boys. Yeah, I think it's a tricky one because people are coming home from work. The 8 o'clock start, school the next day. You put all of them into the melting pot and go, probably not. But then you say, well, they're playing against Parramatta, who there's a lot of fans in Penrith, you being one of them, who followed the blue and golds. And I'd love to see one. I'd love to see it sold out on a Thursday night. They'll go close. Yeah. They'll go very close. But yeah, it's going to be I think it'd be a real carnival atmosphere. And this is probably one of them opportunities where I think maybe I know the New South Wales Cup play on Saturday at 2 o'clock at Penrith Park or Bluebet Stadium. Would have been good to see them play before the NRL game, in front of a capacity crowd. But that's one thing I'd like to see changed in the NRL. I'd like to see when I was coming through the grades, there was always under 23s, reserve grade and first grade played at the same venue between the clubs. And I'd like to see somewhere down the track where we start to get back to that, even if it's an NRLW game. Yep. I've been loving that this year. That's gone next level. Then you play a New South Wales Cup game and then your first grade game. I think fans like to identify with those kids that are coming through the system. And, at the moment we have too big a gap between what's going on, between if you go from work at 6 p.m., then you've got, 2 hours before the game. So you're sitting there basically twiddling your thumbs. So I think we've got to see more footy at grounds, and that's something we all grew up with. I'd like to see that reintroduced, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely get more bang for your buck, watching more footy. And one of the clashes, no doubt, that you're looking forward to seeing is the 2 sets of front rowers. Obviously, Junior Paolo and RCG for Parramatta and Moses Leota and James Fisher-Harris for Penrith. Now, we saw in the grand final that the Penrith duo basically tore Parramatta apart. They had their best games that I've seen them play in a long time.
Yep.
Do you think that's going to be one of the battles to watch between those four?
Mate, I think it always is. I think the front row... I'm intrigued by the front row battles between any club because I think they set the tone of what's to come. You know, we've got so many superstars in number 7 and number 1 in our competition, but unless number 8 or 10 do the hard work up front early, then they're null and void, the 7s and the 9s and the 1s. You're right. The grand final, you throw Liam Martin into that mix as well. Last grand final, and they were just superb. They went out with a mandate to rattle the cage of Junior and Regan, and they did that, and that was a long way to winning the game. And I think any big games when your front rowers are on the front foot, you as another player in the back row or in the back line, you get pumped because of that, because your big boys are winning the battle. You say, okay, if they're winning the battle, they've done their job, let's do ours. So I'd be very disappointed, Troy, if this Thursday night the big boys didn't rumble and make these mountains shake.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, speaking from a Parramatta perspective, probably Junior has had a disappointing season in his standards.
He's been quiet. He's been a little quieter than he has been, yeah.
Yeah, and RCG, he's been out with injury and suspension for a while, so it hasn't quite been the best season, but you never know, with him returning back to the foot of the mountains for a game. Old players playing against their old club love that, so that should be a good battle. Obviously, Parramatta know to look for, they've got to shut down Nathan Cleary's kicking game. I think in that semi-final last year, he had too much time on his hands to put the kicks in, so there was not enough kick pressure.
Yep.
So obviously that's one thing that Parramatta will have to look at doing. But on the Parramatta side, who do you see as could be the danger player for Penrith? Because we all know Penrith have got Dylan Edwards, Jerome Luai, Nathan Cleary as danger players. Stephen Crichton as well, who had a great game on the weekend. But from a Parramatta perspective, who do you think is the one that can trouble Penrith?
I think Dylan Brown's got to get man of the match for you guys to be any chance of being close to Penrith. He's got to show that he's, before his suspension, things were looking really good for Parra, and in particular him. He was playing unbelievable footy. So he owes it to his teammates and the Parramatta faithful to, to come out on Thursday night and try and not just be the man of the match in a game where it's going to be very hard to be, but without Mitchell Moses, he's got to take that slack as well. So I think Dylan Brown's one guy who can trouble any team. He's got great evasion. He's got a good footy IQ. But you're talking about the best defence in the comp as well with Penrith. So they'd be doing their homework on him. And I suppose Jermaine as well. Jermaine playing against his old club. He'd be out for a real big game. And I've been watching him closely because I've watched him a lot last year. Obviously, being the same side as my young bloke. Off and on, may have played a few first New South Wales Cups games last year, and I just love his work rate. I love what Jermaine does off the ball as well as on the ball. He's a very skillful player. He's very fit. He's a great defender. He's the complete package for number 13. He's the perfect 13. So he'll be out for a big game as well. And the two boys you mentioned earlier, Junior and Reg and Campbell Gillard, they'll be out to wash away some of them demons of the grand final last year. So it's going to be a good game. It's never a dull game when Penrith play Parra. You obviously, these last 10 or so years when we've come up against each other, it's always been a toss of a coin, no matter where they're positioned on the ladder. And I think Thursday night could be similar. I know that most people will say Penrith by a lot, but Parramatta bring a different type of mentality to the game where it's kind of almost a home game for them. With the crowd that will be there. Yep. Obviously, it's going to be 70%, if not more, Penrith fans. But I get excited by local derbies. I think we've got to embrace a lot more of them. And just unfortunate that Parramatta aren't up in the top 5 or 6 teams, because it would have been it would have been a definite sellout if they were.
Well, let's get to the important part then. You said a lot of people might think it's Penrith by a lot. What's your score predictions on the game? What do you think it could be?
I'm thinking it might be a little bit of a defensive battle. I think maybe, we might see something like a 10-4 scoreline at half time and to Penrith, and then maybe in the second half we might see Penrith put on 3 or 4 tries. I think maybe something like 28-16 to Penrith. I think it's, one of them games where I'm not sure if Tago's back yet, but if he is back, I think he's one guy who could be really beneficial come semi-finals. Dylan Edwards has been playing out of his skin. In it, some guys is born in the wrong era, and at the moment, with so many good fullbacks around, I think he's almost on top of the heap as far as fullbacks go. And you've got a fullback as well who just gives 100% every time he plays, and that's what you can ask from a rugby league player. Anything under 100%, well, you want to. You scream from the trenches. Let's get going. Bryce Cartwright's been very good this year. I think he's played one of his best seasons since he left Penrith. Must be 7 or 8 years ago. So, So look, I expect a really good encounter. I think the first try scorer, I look for someone like Crichton.
Okay. Yeah.
Or Dylan Brown. I think Dylan Brown's just got. I think he's going to be up to his eyeballs in game management, and I think he's going to be really involved. So, looking forward to a really good one. I think it's So 28-16 will be my prediction for a score.
All right. Well, Penrith on average.
What about you?
Well, Penrith on average have been scoring 26 points for and about 12 against. So that's probably similar to the mark there. But I'm thinking probably like a 24-20 or something like that. Obviously to Parramatta, but it's going to be difficult without Mitchell. But as you said before, local derbies can bring out anything in these teams when they play against each other. So I'm going to go Will Penasini, my old mate Will, as first try scorer. He's had a couple of off weeks the last couple of weeks, but a few mistakes in his game, but hopefully he can get across the line first. And no doubt I'll see you out there at Bluebet on Thursday night. We'll catch up and say good day. And
I'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be there too with bells on.
What's our bet then? What's our little side wager?
Is there a start involved?
I'll give you 4.5.
4.5. All right. Well, as you said, a 6-pack of. You're a Tui's man, aren't you?
Mate, I'm a wine boy these days. I'm a connoisseur of wine.
Okay.
I don't care. I'll get a 6-pack and I'll give you a couple of bottles of Louis Pilly the other way around.
All right, you're on. 4.5 start in Para. Sounds good.
Okay.
Well, MG, thank you very much for joining me on the Para Cave podcast today, and hopefully in a couple of weeks' time we can sit down and have another full-length chat about your career and what you're up to now. The fans would love that, and as I said, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you on Thursday night.
Mate, I'd love to sit down with you and have a good chat, and let's hope this local derby is everything we expect it to be. Go the Panthers and the Eels a little bit.
Come on, Para.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Para Cave Podcast. See you next time.